Happy International Women's Day. I am Carrie Murray, and it is an absolute privilege to serve as president of ShelterBox USA. I'm joined today by my colleague from ShelterBox Canada, Steph Christensen. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone.
A big thank you to everyone who is participating from around the globe. This is not our first ever International Women's Day panel, but it's our first ever virtual panel. And I'm super excited because we have people from around the world who are participating. So thank you so much for being here. So International Women's Day, I feel like this is a birthday for all of us. This is a huge, huge movement. It started over 100 years ago. And it's really a day that we come together to celebrate the economic, the cultural, and the political achievements of women. And we really work to push for greater progress, for gender parity around the world. And ladies, we have a long, long way to go, but we have made a lot of progress. So we're here today to really share with you some insights, some perspectives, and really continue to push for progress. And at ShelterBox, we see that women really every day are suffering disproportionately from disaster and conflict situations. And as a humanitarian organization, we work to provide emergency shelter and basic supplies to communities that have been devastated by both disaster and conflict situations. And women do suffer disproportionately in these emergencies. They experience higher death rates. So in some emergencies, we see women experience up to 14 times greater death rates, increase in economic and educational losses, increase in gender-based violence, and 60% of preventable maternal mortality is occurring in conflict and disaster settings. So as an aid organization, we work to prioritize the most vulnerable, and those are often women. Right now around the world, of the 104 million people that are displaced around the world, 75% are women and children. And yet women are critical to community recovery. They often serve as first responders in emergency, and they are absolutely pivotal to recovery in their communities, in their homes and in their communities. So we work to really prioritize them. I want to quickly turn it over to my colleague, Steph Christensen, and then I am going to introduce to you our incredible panel.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to all of you for being here today. We're so excited to have you. ShelterBox works in a variety of remote and very challenging contexts to ensure that no family was left without shelter. Having deployed with ShelterBox 3 times, I'm always struck by the incredible resilience of communities, especially the women. What stands out the most to me, though, is the capacity that women have to enact change in their communities. In Fiji, after Cyclone Winston, which is the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane, we met families who had lost absolutely everything and parents who had to hold their children above their heads for hours on end because the storm surge was up to their armpits. If these challenges weren't enough, a second cyclone passed through while we were there. Despite not having homes themselves, we worked with this incredible group of women who volunteered for the local Red Cross. They went around before the cyclone hit, ensuring that everyone had a safe place to stay for the second storm. Once it passed, they also ensured that everyone is able to attend our training sessions, that we reached all of the families who needed shelter the most, and that their community was able to use the aid provided to start the recovery process. Through our evaluations, we could see the direct impact that these women had on promoting rapid recovery. This is something that we're seeing time and time again all over the world. Today, we're here to celebrate women as change makers. I really hope that you enjoy your panel, and thank you so much again for your support.
Awesome. Thank you, Steph. Now I am going to introduce this incredible group of ladies, and I want to start with Marie Kagaju Longhorn. Marie is a leader in international development and corporate social responsibility. She was born and raised in Rwanda, and as a political affairs officer for the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, Marie played a major role in convincing 7 African countries to ratify the Chemical Weapons Convention Treaty. She's worked as a program specialist for the UNDP in Mali. She's worked in Kenya. She's worked in the Central African Republic. and now she lives here in the United States. In 2008, Marie moved to California, and she has remained very active in international development. She's working with Malaria No More, Seeds of Empowerment, Teach AIDS, One World Children's Fund, and she's also served with the Middlebury Institute of International Studies up in Monterey. So welcome, Marie, to the panel.
Thank you for having me, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you so much. Next, I want to introduce a Rotary International Director, Valerie Wafer. And Valerie joined Rotary back in 2005, really in order to fuel her passion for making a difference. She was a Rotary District Governor of District 7070, and that's in the Greater Toronto Area in 2013 and 14. And she's continued to serve in a leadership role with Rotary International. She has done so many things. She currently serves as a director with Rotary International, and she also helps to lead the EDI group for Rotary. Valerie formerly owned several Tim Hortons franchises. And Valerie, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Next, I'd like to introduce a dear friend of mine, Leslie Zemeckis. She is a best-selling author. She's an actress. She's a writer and award-winning documentarian. And Leslie has written one of my very, very favorite movies, which is called Mabel Tiger Trainer, as well as Behind the Burly Q, which ran on Showtime. She's currently working on a mentorship program, and it's called Stories That Matter. And she's mentoring young girls between the ages of 18 to 25, helping them to tell their stories. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have Elizabeth Silva. And Elizabeth is Assistant Director of the Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality at the Asia Foundation. She is a gender equality specialist, and she works at the intersection of women and girls' rights and economic growth, education, and health. She oversees the Asia Foundation's economic empowerment portfolio to advance women's entrepreneurship, employment, and girls' educational opportunities. And Elizabeth, we are so thrilled to have you. So thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Next, I'd like to introduce to you Jennifer Lynch. And Jennifer Lynch serves as Senior Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility at Paramount Pictures. She holds a master's in public administration from NYU's Graduate School of Public Service, and she specializes in urban economic and community development. She has been a really incredible advocate for corporate social responsibility, and she's created and co-founded what's called LA Community Leaders, which really seeks to expand the positive impact of businesses in Southern California communities. She's also a mentor for Step Up's mentorship program, and she has spoken so many times on both female empowerment and corporate social responsibility. And we are so grateful to have you, Jennifer. So thank you.
It is such an honor to be here with this distinguished panel. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Okay, Kate Bollinger, our Senior Gender Advisor for USAID's Asia Bureau and the active Division Chief of Policy and Strategic Planning. Kate really supports the integration of gender across USAID's programming in Asia with a focus on gender-based violence, women's economic development, and women's leadership. She supports USAID's Asia strategy and policy development. Welcome, Kate. We're thrilled to have you as well.
Thanks, Carrie.
And last but not least, my dear friend, Andrea Shrestha. And Andrea is the inventor and co-founder of this product, which is called Illuminate Light. And she is dedicated to providing renewable energy solutions in the humanitarian aid world and also in outdoor recreation. And you may have seen Andrea several times because she was on Shark Tank with her innovative product, Luminade, and she received offers from all four sharks, right, Andrea? You partnered with Mark Cuban. And not only has she expanded her Luminade lights to really the outdoor recreation space, but she does so much to help people around the world, and you're going to learn about that today. Her charitable projects have been really across 100 different countries they're bringing their lights to, and Andrea, we're thrilled to have you. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a thrill to be on the panel today.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to start by asking you ladies a series of questions. And Marie, if it's okay, I'd love to start with you. Maria, I know you grew up in Rwanda and your family was there during the genocide. And after the genocide in 1994, women were given really now a space to participate, and participate they did. And so right now we know that women in Rwanda really represent more than 60% of the national legislature. And Rwanda leads the world with the most number of women in civil society. And it's amazing. They're narrowing the gender gap in Rwanda. However, I know feminism is still somewhat of a dirty word. What can we learn from this experience in Rwanda around civic engagement in women, and women really rising when they have to help rebuild their communities?
Thank you for that question. I think the case of Rwanda is something that could be compared to some other circumstances of crisis. When in crisis, we know who stands up and who is working hard, sometimes with so many limited tools. So women in Rwanda, without no exception to other women in crisis in general, they found themselves after the genocide that most of the leaders around, either they were killed or they became refugees. So women were invited to step up and they helped. And that's how in the first place they got involved with the rebuilding of the country. It was really a circumstance no one would wish to any other nation. You know, we don't wish any other country to go through crisis so they can be involved. And, you know, so when women were, and first of all, I have also to highlight that women were found less involved in the killings during the genocide. So there was that factor. And second, once they were asked to participate, not only they learned fast, they gave it all. You know, they went above and beyond. They were found to be efficient. They were found to be less corrupt. So very quickly, women were found to be team players who could be running everything in a successful way. So that was actually the beginning of discovering that women, once they're given opportunity, they are efficient. They give it all, like we know it, and so that way, and also they run everything with compassion, and they want to be including everyone. So that's the reason why actually the current leadership kept including and encouraging women to be part of the conversation, but also part of the policy making in the country. So I think when I got to the USA, what I found is that actually it's not easy for women as it looked from us when we were outside the USA. I found that it's hard to find a conducive environment that will allow women to participate fully. So there is that concept of really making the environment conducive and inviting for women to be part of any improvement of situation at all levels. For instance, in Rwanda, even for any given high-level position, when people need to compete, there was a policy that was requiring that at least 30% of candidates be women. I don't see it as a requirement every time when I look at different businesses or different recruitment policies in some given companies. So I think that encouraging women, for instance, to run for office was something that was highly and recommended and approved by the high office. So there is that concept of intent and intention to help women make it happen. And when I see the circumstances, for instance, here, it's so hard to run or to compete or to do any campaign here, for instance, in the political or leadership positions. Yeah, not only it's harsh, it's expensive, it's intimidating for women. You all have all kinds of stories and experiences for some of our sisters here who try to run for something. So I feel like trying to compare the case of Rwanda and the USA, I think at least in Rwanda, there was an environment that keeps inviting and encouraging and making the circumstances very conducive and facilitating and making it less intimidating for women. So here in the USA, I think we still have a long way to go. And hopefully we don't need to go through a big crisis here to get to some place and to have many women in leadership and in policy-making positions.
Awesome. Thank you, Marie. I heard women in Rwanda were more effective, efficient, and less corrupt. And I think it's a really beautiful model. So thank you, and thank you for that. Valerie, I'm going to shift over to you now. You have a long and very accomplished career that's really inspirational. You worked as a corporate finance executive, and then you were the owner of multiple Tim Hortons franchises, to now you're Rotary International Director. Can you elaborate for us on some of the challenges that you faced along the way, and also how you paved the way for others through your focus specifically on some of the diverse hiring practices that you had over at Tim Hortons?
Sure, Carrie, thanks. You know, I think one of the biggest challenges I had in my early years were really based on the patriarchy attitude, which was solidly in place in the mid-1980s and well into the 90s. You know, women still had traditional roles, and we were expected to also hold traditional family roles in a large percentage of families. Old habits and expectations die hard, and therefore traditional expectations were still being handed down from previous generations when I was new in the workforce. And, you know, this was even practiced when we think about it in our governments, where maternity leave, for example, was only 4 months when I had my first child. And employers often encouraged new mothers not to take that full leave. And as a new mother, the environment suggested that if you took that full leave, it would negatively impact or affect your advancement. So, you know, there was expectations around how we dressed and how we acted versus how men acted and dressed in the workplace. And it wasn't at all unusual, despite me being an executive and having a seat at the board table, to have a male manager suggest that I arrange for coffee to be delivered, right? I mean, it sounds funny now, but back then you simply did it because it was the accepted norm, right? Today we recognize this as stereotypical gender expectation or even pseudo inclusion, right? You have a seat at the board table, but there was a cost, and that cost was to really hide parts of you. And that part was, you know, being female, having family obligations that meant you had to leave work at 5 p.m. because you were on daycare pickup. And Carrie, I know you and I spoke about this. It was really a stressful time, that part of our life. Owning my own company obviously changed that for me. I was 30 years old with 2 small children, but for the first time I was firmly in control, which kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but it was so true. This was a pivotal moment in my life and an opportunity for me to pave the way for the underrepresented. As you mentioned, our hiring practices were inclusive in nature, and they began on day one. By the time we sold our business 3.5 years ago, we had employed over 200 people with disabilities. Disabilities visible and invisible, in positions from entry level to management. At any given time, our disabled employees made up 20% of our workforce. We offered flexible hours, opportunities for advancement, extended leave for education or family obligations. This was long before we knew what building an inclusive environment even looked like, right? And we were doing this early in our career. And, you know, we know that by employing people with vastly different problem-solving skills, we create a more innovative workplace. So they were not only our best employees, they brought immense financial value to our company, a business case that led to both my husband and I being experts in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space and speakers on the value of inclusion in the private sector. So, you know, there was definitely some challenges along the way, but I think it helps really develop who we are.
For sure. Awesome, Valerie. After we spoke last time, I have a little checkbox and it says Trailblazer, and you got a big check. So thank you for all the incredible work that you've been doing, so many different facets. So thank you. Leslie, I'm going to move over to you now. So 3 years ago on International Women's Day, the New York Times launched something called the Overlooked Project, and it was writing the obituaries of remarkable people that they overlooked, largely women. And looking at the obituary archives really provides a stark lesson in how society valued achievers. The vast majority of obituaries were the lives of white men, and less than 20% were females. And trailblazers such as Ida Wells, who was a civil rights leader, Ada Lovelace, the first mathematician who was the first computer programmer, and Charlotte Bronte were all overlooked. So Leslie, for so many years, you've been quietly writing the true stories of female trailblazers and many women who've been marginalized in their field. So can you tell us a few stories of these remarkable women that you've profiled, and also why telling these stories has been so important to you?
Well, in that obituary series, Mabel Stark, who's the star of my documentary, Mabel Tiger Trainer, was finally recognized, even though she had been a huge star in circus and films in the 20s, 30s, 40s. She was known as the world's first female tiger trainer. And partly she not only had a love for these cats, but she was told no woman could do that. So that was her challenge. It was like, oh, really? And 3 weeks later, she had a big act with 12 of the most ferocious type of tiger behind her. And I just think it's important to tell these stories because these women were so inspirational, and we have to look at women beyond the labels. My first film is about burlesque, and a lot of the dancers, AKA strippers, we have to stop calling people strippers, dismissing them, freaks, circus trainers, because some little girl out there is going to be told, no, you can't do that. Makes me really emotional, because you're a girl, because you're a woman of color, you have a physical disability, and we can't do that to little girls. So to all those little girls out there, they need to know that there are women who would not listen to no. And that's really kind of why I do everything.
I love that. And again, Leslie's movie is called Mabel Tiger Tamer, and I can't recommend it enough. And also your other book, Behind the Burly Q. Again, I think telling these stories of women who were definitely overlooked and who were marginalized, but were complete trailblazers in their field. And Leslie, you've maintained this long-term commitment to telling these stories, and they're beautiful. And I'm going to ask you another question later, but it's more about the project that you're doing now, which I'm really excited about. So thank you. Elizabeth, so you do a lot of work, obviously, at the Asia Foundation, and you've done tons of research about gender-related impact of COVID across the region. Can you talk about the economic impacts of COVID on women, and specifically including any similarities that you're seeing across the regions?
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. So globally and across Asia, emerging evidence, including the Asia Foundation's research and policy briefs, have really demonstrated that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a disproportionately negative impact on women and girls and their economic opportunities, their voice and leadership in decision-making, and their rights and security. Gender and intersectional inequalities are often exacerbated during a crisis like the pandemic. And we're seeing this across Asia, across the Pacific, across the APEC region, and more broadly. And if you think about the measures enacted to control the spread of the virus, this includes restriction on movement, isolation, and closure of businesses and services. These are things that increase anxiety and economic uncertainty and really contribute to increased levels of gender-based violence, as you mentioned earlier, and women dropping out of the labor force in higher numbers because of increased caretaking responsibilities. And it's especially true for women who are part of disadvantaged groups and face multiple layers of disadvantages. It's important to note that sectors hardest hit by the pandemic are also those where women are more likely to be working. And since women-owned businesses do tend to be smaller and are more likely to be informal, it really has just created the perfect storm in terms of these layers of disadvantages that women have faced as a result of COVID. To respond to these challenges, in addition to building the evidence base about the gendered impact of the pandemic on women, which I mentioned earlier, our Women's Empowerment and Gender Equality team at the Asia Foundation, we went into work quickly after COVID hit and launched a Lotus Rapid Response Fund with support from our Lotus Circle donors and programmed more than $1 million in 14 countries across Asia by leveraging programs and working with established networks and partnerships to immediately provide women and girls with the tools and resources they need. We focus on a few priority areas, including the enormous increase in gender-based violence and economic empowerment. And the intersection of those two areas focus both on women entrepreneurs and women workers in the informal sector. It's really been amazing to see this work play out and the difference it's made in thousands of lives of women and girls across Asia. And I'll just end by saying that local women's organizations and women and girls are really key to solving the critical challenges that we face, including this pandemic. But they don't always have the platform, the resources to make their voices heard. And that's where the Asia Foundation, ShelterBox, and all of us really can make a difference in providing the resources, the networks, and the tools to women to respond holistically to the challenges and opportunities in their communities and our communities all over the world.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I always say our silence is our acceptance. So I am thrilled you're doing this research. I am thrilled you're raising awareness and giving a voice to this. So awesome work. Okay, Jennifer Lynch, when I think about corporate social responsibility and the queen of corporate social responsibility, I think of you. So you have been leading the way for 25 years. And can you share with us some of the challenges that the organizations you've worked for have worked to overcome? And I know that you're doing so much at Paramount to really champion gender parity within the workplace there and on the sets of your movies. So can you tell us a little bit more?
You're being so generous, Terry. Thank you so much. And I still recall so fondly when we brought you and ShelterBox to Paramount Pictures onto the studio lot so people could really see firsthand what ShelterBox was all about. So thank you for that. And it's true, I have been doing this work for 25 years, which means that when I started this work, we called it something different. It was civic affairs, and civic affairs became corporate affairs, which became public affairs, which became corporate responsibility, public responsibility, and now here we are at corporate social responsibility. Personally, I don't like to call it that. I call it community investment, because we are investing in the community in a way that we want to see a return on that investment. What is the change you want to see in the world? That's where you want to invest. And when I think at Paramount, where we're focused on gender parity, I'm thrilled to say that it was last summer when I got a call from Ava DuVernay's team. She is the director of Selma, among so many other amazing productions. And she let us know that, that her production company had created a tool. It's called Array Crew. And through this tool, it includes candidates who are only women and people of color for below the line crew positions. And what that means is that we have a whole tool that all of our productions can use to make sure that we are bringing women into the forefront, that we are considering women for production positions like location manager and assistant director and costume designer, and that we are truly creating stories by and for the people that we are sharing them with. It's an exciting time for us. We have invested significantly in the Array Crew tool. We have a multi-year commitment. We have skin in the game to make sure that in the future that our content will be made for women and it will be made by women.
I love that. And Jennifer, we talked a lot about that, how you guys are specifically investing in the content development end of it too, right? So you're really trying to create content that's much more representative of your audiences, right? So, which is awesome. Okay, Kate Bollinger. Okay, you are doing incredible work at USAID, and I know that you and your group are really deeply committed to advancing women, to advancing peace and security. Why is it important right now to ensure that women are active participants and leaders in peace and security efforts?
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks for that good question on why women and peace and security is so important, and especially right now.
As you mentioned in my bio, I'm coming from the perspective of the international development sector, specifically the United States Agency for International Development. As a little background, we just prioritize gender equality as a core part of our development work. We know that that needs to be central for our efforts to be effective. So specific to your question on gender and peace and women and peace and security, we know that women's participation in conflict prevention and resolution is critical. It improves outcomes before, during, and after conflict. However, despite this, their role as active agents of peace often goes unrecognized. And we know that women also have different experiences during conflict that need to be understood and considered in resolution. For example, violent conflict disproportionately affects women and girls and intensifies pre-existing gender inequalities. Just to give a few more tangible data points, we know the participation of civil society groups, including women's organizations, makes a peace agreement 64% less likely to fail. We know that when women participate in peace processes, the resulting agreement is more durable and better implemented. Higher levels of gender equality are associated with lower levels of conflict. And finally, female security officials frequently have access to populations and venues that are closed to men, and that gives a different perspective on risks and security. Despite these facts, women are still too often removed from efforts to prevent or end conflict. And that's why at USAID, we place a strong emphasis on ensuring women have strong roles in peace and security. Our work is grounded in the U.S. Women, Peace and Security Act and the recent U.S. Strategy on Women, Peace and Security, so we have a good foundation to build on. Just to give you a sense of what we do in this space, since 2017, we've supported the participation of 70,000 women in political and peace building processes around the world. I'll just give a couple examples from Asia, since that's where my work is focused. In Burma, we had a great program that addressed common barriers to women's participation in the formal peace process. We supported a rapid response fund that provided women with resources such as childcare, transportation, and training, and allowed them, it was a very flexible fund, so it allowed them to attend and influence national dialogue peace processes when they had the opportunity. The program also increased ethnic women's capacity to influence peace dialogues. A second example in the Philippines, where women hold a very strong influence in the family, business, and political decisions. It's critical to strengthen their leadership skills to support peace. In the Philippines conflict-affected island of Mindanao, in particular, we trained 170 women as community leaders and mediators, who then went on to organize peace activities and services that improve trust among diverse groups. Those are just a couple of many examples we have, but it's clear that bringing women's leadership and participation into peace and security is essential to achieving sustained peace. Thanks.
Awesome, Kate. I am such a huge fan of your work, and ladies, all of the work that you are doing to empower women, so many different ways, and I'm just so inspired. Okay, Andrea Shrest, I'm really excited for people to learn a little bit more about your work and the Illuminate lights I mentioned. And I know it was immediately following the earthquake in Haiti, and it was back in 2010 that you and your friend and fellow graduate student, Anna Stork, invented the Illuminate. And it was a means of providing a portable light to communities and families that were devastated by disaster. And I've seen this all, when you've had disasters, you've had loss of power in pretty much all disasters. And particularly in some of these settings, right, it can be very dangerous, right, to do common tasks, like even going to the bathroom at night. So as you were a young inventor at the time, and you're part of a very elite group, there are only 8% of women that hold patents. So can you tell us how you got started in this business? What happened on Shark Tank? And what really drove you and Anna to apply to be part of that group and that 8% of females that hold patents?
Sure, I mean, those of us that remember that event in 2010, we were all sort of thinking through what we could do to help the situation, whether it was the humanitarian aid organizations on the ground, but then us as students, design students, we were really trying to think through, you know, without a ton of resources, what could we do to help people who are in a tough situation there on the ground? And we focused in on some of the more unmet needs in a disaster and kind of arrived on this thought that, well, when the sun goes down and things become dark, people really don't have a way to function at night. But we also knew that Haiti was a sunny place, so it had a lot of sun. So something along the lines of solar really made sense as a solution. And the idea kind of came to us very quickly. And then from there, we started working with prototypes and our design. And I think at some point we just stopped and considered the fact that, you know, did we think that something like we had created existed? No, we didn't think it had. And then also, do we think it was something that could help people? And the answer to that was yes. And so at that point, we were just sort of putting one foot in front of the other. And then I think from there, kind of, we expanded our goals of understanding how Luminate technology would work in off-grid areas. And so we did some testing and you know, further prototyping and surveying of a lot of charities that we were in touch with at the time. And then ultimately, you mentioned Shark Tank. So a few years later, we ended up on the TV show Shark Tank with the opportunity to sort of present our idea to the world, get some investment money in the process. And we, much to our surprise, I think, ended up with an investment from Mark Cuban. One of the things that we were really mindful of was the fact that we had a bit of a different idea. I mean, we had something that people were buying commercially for camping, but especially with the humanitarian aid aspect of Luminate, we didn't really know or have had examples on the show of other people who had come to the Sharks with this sort of idea that was meant also to just help people in situations and disasters. And I think that's been one of the greatest things about having made the partnership with Mark, is that he's really supportive of, I think, anything and everything we want to do on that side of things to help people in disasters, do these charitable projects that Luminate is very committed to. And I will say the other thing too, for those that are fans of the show, I think we were on a while ago, but I think since then, you'll see trends where I think shows like Shark Tank are really mindful increasingly of representation and representing sort of like different people who come to start businesses with all sorts of variety of different situations. And as two females on the show, we wanted to at least try our best to set a great example because there's a lot of young people that watch the show. So we wanted to just, I guess, convey the concept that you can do this too, whether you are male, female, wherever you're coming from with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. And again, this is your Luminate solar lantern. If you don't know this, this is a collapsible waterproof light. And we include these lights as part of the ShelterBox. And in conflict settings, all forms of violence against women increase. So lighting, particularly important for safety, and lots of other tasks, getting back to work again, reading, and just we're so grateful for these lights. So thank you, Andrea. Okay, ladies, I'm going to ask you each a question. These are going to be shorter questions, so maybe 1 to 2 minutes per question, and then we're going to move to some participant questions as well. So we've been getting a lot of chat in, which is awesome. Continue to chat in your questions for our amazing panelists. But Marie, I'd like to start with you. You've lived and worked all across the world on peace and reconciliation efforts. You worked on the prohibition of chemical weapons, ensuring democratic elections, and now to your role as a mother in the United States. What are the similarities that you've witnessed for women across the world, and what gives you hope for the future? Marie, you're muted.
Yeah, am I?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
We can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. What I noticed is that all the women of all walks of lives, whether they are from the South, the West, the North, you know, you name it, we all want the best for our families, our children, our communities. Sometimes we put everyone else before all of us, which I found it interesting that it's true everywhere for all the women I know, especially mothers. So we all want really the best for everyone because it's in our nature of caring and, taking care of everyone and being inclusive. So that's, I think, one common thing we all have. That's one thing I noticed. And yet, I can realize that in many places, women's contribution is really not optimized. And I still wonder why. If we are caring people, but yet we're not given a chance to, optimize our contribution, it means we still have a long way to go. For example, and I'm very happy for Valerie that you could be in charge and, bring in many other diverse teams and other people. I wish men and women had that opportunity, for instance, because when you go to those big companies' ballrooms or board meeting rooms, you find that there will be like maybe 15 males and maybe, if we're lucky, 2 women. So why is still the case today, honestly? So in areas of leadership and employment, I find it hard that for women, it has to be a kind of a way of choosing, either choosing to pursue a career or to be with the family only. And in many cases, I think, the child care issue has been a tricky situation for many women, many mothers. And for instance, in this time of COVID, look how many women had to get out of jobs, let the employment so they can pay attention to their children, especially because there was no schools, childcare was impossible, you couldn't have people inside, So it's every context that is complex or making things easier, it makes it even worse for women. And that's true everywhere. That's something I find always, difficult for women. And that's not only here, it's everywhere. And another situation I always think, when I think about, for instance, the case and example of Rwanda, when women are given opportunities, they really show results. There are outcomes that are very out there for everyone. And this is true, especially in the cases of many countries where disaster or conflicts are a huge issue. Even with very little tools, women always step up. They never complain. They just work with whatever resources they have, no matter how limited they might be. So why is still the case that, whenever there is an opportunity, the societies almost everywhere, we always think about males first before we go to women. For instance, in places, turned by disasters, as now we are talking with you, Carrie, I haven't seen women given, for instance, big contracts to rebuild any new place hit by disaster. I think we always go first to the companies, big name, male-owned companies. So we still have a long way to go. So I'm the same time, I'm still optimistic though. We can't give up because, we have also good, successful, true stories where when women were given a chance, even up to today with our vice president, we still have to keep hope and faith. Thank you.
We do. Thank you, Marie. And you're right. And ladies, while this is a lot about celebrating achievements, a lot of it is also raising awareness. And when we look at closing the gender gap, we are still a long way to go. We are unlikely to see it in our lifetime. It's probably going to be 100 to 150 years is what they estimate. And you mentioned the corporate boardrooms. And yes, Marie, women are largely underrepresented in the corporate boardrooms, and we need to keep pushing for progress. So Valerie, you are a senior ranking leader within Rotary International. It's one of the oldest service organizations in the world. It's in over 200 countries. Can you share just how far Rotary's come in its 116 years regarding just gender equity? And really, can you share some of the changes that you've seen, but also how you personally plan to help accelerate the movement?
Sure. So Rotary began with one man, Paul Harris, and 3 of his friends in 1905 in Chicago. And it's only been 32 years that women have been granted membership in Rotary, and it took the Supreme Court decision to have this occur. So today, women make up 23% of our global membership. And so, as you say, Carrie, we've got a long way to go to gender parity, but the numbers do continue to increase. And the 5-year trend for women in Rotary and in Rotary leadership positions has been growing. So currently our policy documents attach tenure to many of our leadership roles. So you have to have been in Rotary a certain amount of time before you can apply to the next level of leadership. And the fact that women have only been in Rotary since 1989 has, to a large part, held us back from some of those leadership positions. But the great thing is that currently we're looking and reviewing all policy that's based on these tenure requirements, and we're looking at our governance models and how these volunteer roles need to evolve to suit our next generation of leaders. So, we're talking about the fact that there really should be greater weight put on personal or professional skills or leadership ability, not the number of years that you've been a member. It's not about ticking a box. It's about really, being the best that you can be in the position that makes sense for you. And the thing is, we know that progress never happens as quickly as we all want, but progress is being made. And if I can just say that 3 years ago, there was no women on the Rotary International Board. And last year there were 2. This year there are 6, and next year there's going to be 8. 8 out of 17. So for the first time in the history of our organization, we're going to have gender parity, or very close to gender parity, on the board. And in 2022, we'll have our first female president, Jennifer Jones from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. So we are really, really excited about what this means to our organization. It's so necessary, but we all know that we need to promote and develop female leaders in our clubs and our districts, because this is where it really starts. It really starts in our communities. And so I am very excited about where we're going, and I'm excited to be part of the change for Rotary International.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I got the chills. I'm a Rotarian and a member of the Montecito Rotary Club, and I'm thrilled that Jennifer Jones is coming in as our RI president next year. Okay, Leslie, you recently launched the initiative called Stories Matter. And can you share us a little bit more about this project? I know you're really targeting women, young women, to help share and surface their stories. So why did you start it, and what are your goals for it? You're muted. Yep. Nope. Muted. No?
I didn't mute me.
Perfect. You're in.
Okay. Am I here?
Yeah.
Okay. I started it because I think girls and then into women are not taught that their story matters, the story of their community, the story of their grandmother, and to really help young girls find their voice and let them know that their story matters, that it's important. And then for them to give back then to the next generation. My logo for the program is a circle. It's not I'm at the top teaching them. It's like we're in together, and I'm passing this to them, and I hope to teach them to then pass it on, that you don't have to have a certain amount of success to say I have knowledge and I want to then give that forth. I think that we all need to raise girls with the power that they have, and that their stories or whatever they're interested in has meaning, and how to do it.
That's awesome. You are giving courage to a lot of these girls and giving them a voice. So I love that work that you're doing. Jennifer, back to CSR, and corporate social responsibility has long been a department within the companies, right? But I think often leadership doesn't really know what to do with CSR. However, in disaster situations or tragedy situations, you're probably the first call, right? So what advice do you have for companies looking to start or really further focus their CSR programs more strategically? And how is Paramount doing that?
So thanks, Carrie. I have always had the theory with community investment programs that they need to be aligned with brand strategy. who the company is, what they're trying to accomplish, what role they want to play in the community. A few years ago, I ran an organization called the VH1 Save the Music Foundation. This was a campaign designed to put music programs back into public schools. It still exists now, and it was aligned with VH1, the cable music channel. Back then, they played a lot of music videos on the channel, and so our audience were people who loved music, and so it would make perfect sense that VH1 would establish a community investment initiative focused on restoring music programs in public schools. And because that's what we did, and we did it so well, and it was all we did, we had great success. We won an Emmy, we won a Peabody Award, and we became known as the organization for music education. The same thing with Paramount. Now at Paramount, we are focused very firmly on creating that next generation of America's great storytellers. And I love hearing what Leslie's doing with Stories Matter, because stories do matter, and voices need to be heard, and they need to be encouraged. Every year through our program, Kindergarten to Cap and Gown, we have 100 Paramount employees serving as mentors in public schools in the UK and in the public schools that surround the lot in Hollywood. And at the elementary school level, we are teaching young children to just love story. At the middle school level, we're teaching young children to write their own screenplays through the help of our mentors, and then those screenplays are further performed by professional actors. And at the high school level, our high school mentors, one-on-one, have a Paramount employee that will help them write their own story. And all of these stories are compiled into a book. I happen to have it here. And so these children will graduate high school as published authors. And what a great thing to put on your college application. All of these voices need to be heard, and that's what we're investing in.
I love it. Thank you, Jennifer. That's so exciting. Elizabeth, I want to go back to you and talk about, it's been a really tumultuous time, a lot of women leaving the workforce. What policies and practices are needed to support women to stay in the workforce right now and keep their business operating during such a difficult time?
Yeah, well, we've really seen the need for holistic policies that support women and families. So that includes flexible work arrangements that recognize the many hats that women wear, but also at the same time support male workers to engage in those caretaking roles during this challenging time are equally as important. Paid family leave for both men and women have made a huge difference. And it's especially needed for women who are doubly or even triply disadvantaged based on their gender and other identities. In addition, echoing what Marie said, subsidies to care centers to help them adjust to safety measures and stay open during the pandemic really remains vital. And in the long term, high quality discounted or free childcare and pre-K programs at large, you know, especially for low wage workers, will be so important to help women remain and re-enter in the workforce after the pandemic. And then just finally, you know, we do see that gender norms that reinforce caretaking being a woman's role, we do see that shifting somewhat, but there's a lot more work that remains. And men and boys play an important role and need to be part of the solution to really advance women's economic empowerment holistically.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Elizabeth. And it's encouraging to see that during the pandemic, you know, we're seeing a lot of people step up, right? Men and women stepping up, because there's a lot more to do, especially related to childcare. Staying on that same topic of the pandemic, and I'm going to throw this over to Kate now. We know that COVID-19 has led to a lot more hours online for women and girls, bringing both opportunities and lots of challenges. Can you discuss some of the implications for your work on this relative to gender in Asia?
Sure, thanks, Carrie. Very timely question with where we are right now. Just to give a little background, we see enormous gaps around the world in women and girls' access to digital technologies and online spaces. More than half the world's women are not connected to the internet. So when we look at the last year, with COVID-19 having increased our reliance on digital services such as online education, health, social interactions, business opportunities, with fewer women and girls able to access the internet, they're increasingly left behind, and that's exacerbating already existing gender inequalities. And women and girls who do have access to the internet can also face significant dangers. I know a few people have already mentioned the increasing rates of gender-based violence, including domestic abuse we've seen during the pandemic, and there's also been a surge in online and ICT-facilitated violence against women and girls. So just quickly on what USAID is doing, we've recently completed research to understand more about the issue of online gender-based violence globally. And our research highlighted the real-life impacts of these experiences. Over 85% of our respondents to the survey who experienced gender-based violence online reported fearing for their own safety or the safety of a person close to them, and reported feeling sad, anxious, or depressed. So it's a really serious problem we need to pay attention to. USAID is thinking about this area more and more. Our new digital strategy specifically looks at closing the gender digital divide and also addressing risks that women and girls face online. We have something called the Women Connect Challenge that is also looking at women and girls' use of technology, and some of our programs address the root causes that keep women offline, such as restrictive societal norms and gender-based violence. So it's a really complex problem. In Cambodia, we recently launched an online safety awareness campaign that distributed safety tips across different online platforms. So trying to reach a wide audience. Just to close, this world has become virtual almost overnight. And so anything we can do to increase women and girls' safety online and access to the internet will really have a significant impact. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Kate. Appreciate. So I'm going to finally move to Andrea, and then we have a couple of wrap-up notes. So Andrea, this little light, your Illuminate light, has helped empower women around the world. And I'm wondering if you can talk about maybe a few examples of how you've really helped empower women in the field. And I know you have some stories from your education project in Senegal, so we'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of interesting, continuing on what Kate was saying about ensuring that women are connected. We see light, or our lights being used in many of these projects where they are actually just tools for women to be productive in whatever way they are setting out to do so. And not just women, but also young girls. So the project you were referring to is, it's a project done with an organization called Women's Global Education Project, and they help girls in Senegal both go to school, but also stay in school, since there's a huge drop off as you go, through the years of school for women. And they have a project where young girls can rent books or check out books from a library, and they can also check out Illuminate lanterns, so that when they go home and read the books, oftentimes they don't have lighting at home, but this way they have a way to complete their homework and read books. And so I think for us, it's just yet another example where when you give women and girls the right tools to succeed, they often do.
That's awesome. Thank you, Andrea. I love that story about the library loan program and the light loan program. I think it's awesome. So ladies, we are going to be closing out this panel in just a moment. But International Women's Day is held every March 8th. And it's all about celebrating the achievements of women. And we talked a lot about those today. So both economic, cultural, political, but we have to keep pushing for more progress. And this year's theme for International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. And so if we can finish up today by everyone's having their Choose to Challenge. And if you'd like, I can start. I'm a big believer in the 3 G's, and I call it give, get, and gather. And the first is give. Give up your time to causes that impact women. Get a mentor and find someone who can really support you. And then gather. Gather women, gather men, gather allies around the cause as well. And so that is my Choose to Challenge. So we're going to go around. We'll go around in the Brady Bunch style. So Leslie, do you want to go next? What's your Choose to Challenge? You're muted. Okay, you're good.
Okay. So I would say to celebrate another woman's story, either past or present, by passing it on.
Oh, I love that. Awesome. Thanks, Valerie.
I would say honestly, be a mentor, tap somebody on the shoulder, recognize a woman leader and nurture that skill and just be there with her, because that's honestly how many of us got where we are today.
So true. Thank you, Valerie. Kate.
I'm going to say let's listen to all women, especially most marginalized and vulnerable, and center what we're doing around their needs and their family needs.
Andrea?
My choose to challenge is that we keep women in particular in mind in tough situations like the current pandemic or even future disasters, emergencies, and crises.
Jennifer.
According to Forbes, women currently control $72 trillion. It's the greater amount of wealth than we've ever had before. And I challenge women, look at your personal philanthropic intentions. Think about them like your investment portfolio. What are your long plays? What's for your emergencies? What are the things you need to do because your friends and your family ask you? What are those annual gifts that you make to your alumni fund, to your kids' school? But once you've figured out that strategy, give now and give more than you think you can give, whether it's your money, your time, your talent, your expertise, but give now because we need you more than ever.
Awesome. There's an old adage, right, Jennifer? Give until it feels good. Keep giving. Elizabeth.
I'd like to challenge men to step up and support women and allow women to achieve everything that they can.
Awesome. And Marie.
I choose to challenge us to work harder to increase women's participation in every aspect, political, economic, social, because when women represent us or get it, they will be including all of us. They won't be having it for themselves. They will be just taking care of all of us.
Awesome. Thank you, Marie. And thank you for everyone who's attended today. I have a special request, and if all of you want to go to our website, you can go to shelterboxusa.org/International Women's Day. We have a very special initiative called Shelter Her. And so we have a great corporate partner in the Zebra who is matching donations to our programs that really help enable and empower women. So you can go on to our website for more information. Ladies, thank you. You inspire me so much and appreciate your time today. And I look forward to following all of you as we move forward and connecting all of you. I think there's a lot of ties that bind all of our work together. And we're just so grateful for you taking the time to participate, and to all of the people from around the world. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are online watching this. So thank you so much for being here with us. Take care and have a great International Women's Day.
Thank you.
Thanks.